Good evening, wrestling fans. Jeff Upson. I'm alongside Eric Knopfcenter. You are now tuned in to the PA Power Hour. And Eric, we just got done watching a very, very ugly Steelers game. In fact, I missed the last 3 minutes, but I heard Antonio Brown's cousin, what do they call him, Hollywood Brown, he got a touchdown. Trace McSorley came in. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, I was just fast forwarding through it. I was behind, and I knew we had to catch up so I could get ready to do this. So I was fast forwarding. I did see the Ravens scored a late touchdown, but I didn't really see how. So I know that the final was 19-14.
Well, the Steelers are undefeated, 11-0. That's as Rob Watko has in his Twitter handle. I don't know if you've seen that. It says Pittsburgh Steelers 10-0, number 1 seed in AFC. You know, he has that in his Twitter line. So. Yeah, ugly game though. Weird game too. I kind of forgot the fact that they were playing at 3:40 day. Very odd. The whole thing was odd, overall.
Yeah, everything about it. But hey, you gotta power through and be mentally strong and get that victory.
Speaking of being mentally strong, we're going to be joined in a second here by Nick Fuller of the Tactical Mind to talk a little bit about what wrestlers can do to get their mind sharp and their mind ready to go for this uncertain and a little bit, I would say, nervous going into the season about whether there is going to be a season or not. We're going to talk about the top incoming freshmen, which we just released yesterday. That's 75 of the top incoming freshmen in the state of Pennsylvania, in addition to 32 honorable mentions. So that's over 100 wrestlers that you're going to want to get to know going into the season. And Eric, this was a hard season to do the top incoming freshmen just because we had no, really off-season results, so to speak. We didn't have, the different guys that we know they're making moves just because we didn't have any action. We had no competition. So it was really tough this year.
Yeah, I'm amazed every year, Jeff, at the work you put into this and what you do to get the top incoming freshman report together. It's so difficult, but this year was just that times 10 because you don't know, there probably, I would guess, more guys have been held back this year than have ever been before that we've seen that, could have been freshmen this year. And, or could they actually be held back, or do you have to do it between 7th and 8th grade? I'm not sure how that works.
I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule on it.
But yeah, it was difficult to say the least for you to get all this info that you needed this year, especially.
Yeah, for sure. It was, I had a lot of help from Dyson Gold, our I don't know what to call him. He's like our analyst. He's our specialist. He's our everything. He's our Swiss Army knife. He does a little bit of everything.
He's our junior Power Ranger.
He's our junior Power Ranger. I like that, Eric. I like that a lot. That's good. I don't think he'll like that very much. But,
no, he won't like it at all, which makes it even better.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. Well, without further ado, I want to bring on a good friend of mine, and I've known Nick for over 10 years. We went to college together. So actually, Eric, you're outnumbered by West Virginia Mountaineers tonight.
Not another Mountaineer.
That's right. Let's go, Mountaineers.
You didn't tell me that.
Oh, I didn't tell you that.
I did not agree to be a part of this.
Is Eric a pit guy?
Yeah,
I am.
Yeah, Eric's a pit guy. He's a pit guy.
The pit singlet hanging on the wall back here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my eyes just chose not to see that.
Well, let's. I'm gonna. You already made an entrance, but Nick Fuller of the Tactical Mind. Nick, how you doing tonight? Appreciate you stopping on. I like that you're wearing your Bucknell Bison sweatshirt there.
Oh, yeah, you got to represent the Bison. Lewisburg's been great to me. I've been here about a year and a half and love Lewisburg. But I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
And Nick, we go back a long way, right? We went to WVU together. We spent a lot of time together in college. Post college, you're now a father. I'm going to be a father here in a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how, I know this, but I want to hear you in your own words. How did you get into, the mind aspect? Talk about your time down in Savannah and training with the Army. Can you talk a little bit just about how you got into the mental aspect?
Yeah. So sports psychology is something that not a lot of people are familiar with. I'd say it's getting more popular in the last few years, but, when I was growing up, I struggled on the mental side of sports. And I didn't have a coach who knew anything about sports psychology to say, like, hey, this is what you're working with right now. This is what you're struggling with. It was just like, work harder, or hey, just relax, or go out there and be confident. But if you're that person who's really struggling with confidence and somebody tells you just to go out there and have more confidence, like, are you good? Probably not. So I feel like I never lived up to my true potential as an athlete. And when I look back at my athletic career, it wasn't due to a lack of physical skill. It was due to 100% lack of that mental toughness. And what we know nowadays is that's 100% trainable. You can coach somebody to have more confidence, to have more present moment focus, to be able to relax themselves when the match is on the line. And how do you not amp yourself up too much where you're making critical mistakes? And so when I look back at my career, again, it's just I never lived up to my potential, and I wanted to investigate that further. And so after college and after getting a master's, I was lucky enough to work for the Army doing sport and performance psychology. The Army sees their soldiers as tactical athletes, and soldiers need the same thing that wrestlers need. They need focus. They need to be able to reset themselves after making a critical mistake. And so I got to work with tankers, Apache pilots, Rangers, special operators, and just working with them on their mental toughness to take overseas in a deployed environment. And then a year and a half ago, when we moved up here, started the Tactical Mind and just working with wrestlers, lacrosse players. I'm pretty much working with every sport right now.
And Nick, you were at the Surge last year, and we were able to kind of talk about how it translates so much into wrestling, right? The mental edge. And I don't think there's a sport, maybe golf, but there's not really a much of a sport like wrestling where I think the space between your ears is so critical and so important to success. And it's interesting because you went to Easton High School, so you know wrestling, traditionally the powers of what wrestling are. You know Jordan Oliver, and in fact, I think you're going to have a show here with Jordan Oliver sometime soon. Those are things that, like you said, it's trainable, and it's interesting because growing up around the same age as you, I can remember going to actually our good friend Jake and I went to a personal trainer, and the first thing he did was give us a book called Mind Gym. And we read the book Mind Gym, and it was the first time anyone's ever really talked to us about, training your brain, mental aspect of wrestling. So I think it's great what you're doing. And now you're, in the heart of Pennsylvania. You're right in the Lewisburg area there. You have a lot of good connections with Bucknell and everything going on there. So can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like training and working with wrestlers? Because you having that experience in kind of growing up around wrestling, how did that translate over for you helping out wrestlers? And really, is there a specific playbook you have for wrestling when you're talking about the mental aspect?
Yeah, I'll touch on that in just a second. But, going back to your personal trainer story, right, and handing you Mind Gym, so I've read Mind Gym a few times. It's a great book. And when you read it, and this is what I love about sports psychology too, is everything that I tell you when I work with you, it's what I teach isn't rocket science. Like when you were reading Mind Gym, you're not doing like quantum physics and what I call sports psychology is advanced common sense. And so it's things that you're already doing, but now we're putting a name to it. So it just doesn't happen randomly, but you can control, the thoughts that you're having that are working for you or against you. You can handle your arousal levels and you can regulate that. It just gives you some tools to be able to be a more effective wrestler and to wrestle at your potential. And so tying in, how does all of this work with wrestling? I think I do agree with you that wrestling is definitely one of the top mental sports with, how you said it's just going on between your two ears. I was talking with a client the other day, and, there's so much pressure when you're wrestling because it's between you and another person. There's no team aspect. There's a team aspect, but when you're wrestling, it's you versus another person. And so how do you handle that pressure? And there's some people who can see pressure and thrive in it. And there's other people who crumble under pressure. And it's like, so why can we put two people into the same exact situation? One person thrives in that situation, the other person crumbles. Well, oftentimes it's due to what's going on up here. And ultimately, you know, if you're not handling pressure well, if you're not confident in that moment, if you're having a real hard time controlling your nerves, it doesn't matter whether it's wrestling or any other sport. Are you having fun? Like when all that's going on mentally, like, and you're really struggling with confidence, you're really struggling with the pressure? Probably not. And so, you know, not only are with working with somebody in the sports psychology field, like, are you going to have more mental toughness? But I think you get more enjoyment out of your sport as well when you're not struggling with pressure and confidence and all those other things that go along with the psychological side of it.
Nick, what are you seeing right now, not just from wrestlers, but athletes in general? How do you help them cope with everything that's going on right now with COVID, with the uncertainty of, are we going to have a season? Are we not going to have a season? How is this? How do you help them harness that and say, you know, kind of control what they can control?
I mean, you said it right there. That's the biggest thing, is having wrestlers identify what is controllable. I mean, if we look at all the things in life that we have control over versus all the things that we don't have control over, you know, one pot is way bigger than the other. And it's all about, where do you focus your attention and control what you can control. Again, it's what I teach is not rocket science, but, you know, there's three things that we can control. We can control our thoughts, we can control our emotions and feelings, and we can control the amount of effort that we put into something. And it's, you know, athletes that I've worked with that have really done well during the COVID environment. You know, you don't know if your season's going to start, you don't know when it's going to stop, and all of that. I mean, is that controllable or uncontrollable?
All right.
I mean,
it's out of your control.
Yeah, it's definitely out of, and so it can be, if you're only focused on the things that are outside of your control, what's going to happen to your motivation and what's going to happen to your morale? And working through COVID, you know, I've seen some of the best athletes, and it's really, really impressed me with how they are able to, you know, if their practices and games get canceled for 10 days, you know, they focus on what they can control. They know that they can focus on the amount of effort they put in. So they're outside 7 a.m. the next day working on setting drills or working on whatever, and they're focused on what they can control. And I mean, you can drive yourself crazy if you just are constantly thinking about the what ifs or the this is so unfair, et cetera. You don't have control over that. You're going to drive yourself crazy.
And Nick, talk a little bit about just how you are able to translate that into you know, feasible things that a wrestler can do. So like you said, it's not as simple as, hey, have more confidence, work harder. There's actually things like in-match things that you can do to help. And now a wrestling match is 6 minutes long, as you know. That's not a whole lot of time, you know, for the mental preparation beforehand, during. You know, what are some things that wrestlers can do in the middle of a match? You know, you're down by 3 going into the third period. You know, what are you going to do, and how do you tell yourself to, because we've seen it multiple times where wrestlers that are they succeed at a high level is because they never look like they're you know, in a position where they're out of breath, or they're confused and they don't know what they're going to do, and they always seem like calm, cool, and collective. How do you teach something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so the first way I'll answer that is, there's with psychology, like, there's no magic pill that can work for every single person. You know, like, you know, if you have high blood pressure, you go to the hospital, they're gonna give you 50 cc's of this medicine, and they'll know that your blood pressure drops by this much. Like, I can't give you, Jeff, 50 cc's of optimism, right, even though I think you might need that. I can't give you 50 cc's of optimism and then have you just be like, all right, I'm good, I'm good to go. Like, it doesn't work that way. So it's very individualized. And the second thing I'll say to that, and then I'll give like a tangible thing, is probably the most important thing, and often gets there's a little oversight on that, is you have to front load these mental skills that we go over. if you're struggling with confidence or whatever, it is, you can't just go take the mat and then be like, all right, I'm going to be confident. I'm going to do this one thing that Nick told me. And then no, that doesn't make sense. You wouldn't try a new move out without practicing it first and getting it down. So you have to front load all these mental skills. And then that helps, you be able to, when it is, 3 minutes into the match and you're already down by 3 points, if you front loaded these mental skills, you're going to be much more likely to keep your head in the game and to be able to still compete at your potential, or even above your potential in those moments. So what's one skill that I think is universal for everybody? I mean, it's crazy to think, but have you ever been around a coach and they see that you're a little amped up and they just say, "Hey, Jeff, hey, Eric, take a breath."
Mm-hmm.
We've all heard that before, right? And so coaches, they're 70% of the way there. So yes, but we know that the number one way to manipulate our biology, so if we're a little amped up, is to take a deliberate breath, or what I call a tactical breath. And so it's just manipulating your breath a little bit more to kind of pump the brakes on that fight or flight system going on. So if you're a little amped up pre-match or whenever, and you're trying to amp yourself down, there's a skill that we can work on to really, again, kind of take your foot off the gas pedal just a little bit on that fight or flight, and then allow you to get yourself back into a zone of really where you perform at your best. And there's so much more that goes into it besides just taking a deep breath. But yeah, that's one skill that's really easy that everybody's, I'm sure, already done before. But yeah.
Nick, we're obviously talking about the mental side of it, but I mean, this can have physical manifestations too, right? I mean, if a guy goes out there and he's just way too pumped up, way too anxious, that can take a physical toll on you, right? Where that's really kind of bringing you down and maybe tiring you out before you really should hit that physical exhaustion point if you're mentally where you should be.
Yeah, absolutely. You might not even recognize, think of your bodies as a cell phone battery, right? You only have a certain amount of energy each and every day. And if you're really amped up pre-match, you might not think you're physically exerting yourself, but you can bet that your body is expending a whole lot of energy in those moments. And so how do we go through a pre-performance routine where we can lower that anxiety a little bit? We can lower that pressure a little bit. We can lower that adrenaline. So that way, when we take the mat, our batteries, those cell phone batteries, haven't been wasted just, perusing Facebook or whatever, but we're saving that energy for when we need it.
And it's funny that you bring up the fact that, we see that happen time and time again where wrestlers burn out, and they just, they're coming out strong and hot in the first period, second period, but then by the third period, just their energy's all gone. And you had mentioned the flight or fight, and really, I mean, wrestling is a fight. It is. You're going into battle. You're going into the Coliseum where you're taking on somebody else and you're trying to outwork them and physically win. That is so. It has to be. I mean, I know from my experience in wrestling, it's hard to suppress that amped up feeling of I got to go out there. I got to go out there, and I want to just you're like a rabid dog going after something. It's like that. I love that idea of breathing is easy, but tactile breathing, deliberate breathing, all those different things, these really help with calming those nerves. So I love it, and I think a lot of our fans and listeners can probably relate to and learn from some of these things, Nick.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about that though is you're right. Everybody is different, and with wrestling, it's a very dog-eat-dog competitive sport, but I would throw it back on you just a little bit, and I'm sure, and you can relate to this. You perform at your best to a point of that aggression or that fight or flight. But what happens when you get you want to be a 7 out of 10 with that fight or flight kicking in, and then all of a sudden you're at a 20 out of 10. Then I think and this is all stuff that's controllable, is we can bring ourselves back down from that 20 to that 7 or to that 6. It's controllable. It takes a lot of work, but that's something that we can that everybody works on.
Well, I love it, and I love the fact that you're back in Pennsylvania. You're working with athletes in the area. I love the fact that we've known each other for so long, and yet we're still working together. So it's nice to have someone that in the business, so to speak. And Eric, it probably has been several years since Eric has been anywhere near competition. But
wow,
I think even Eric can relate to some of these things, right?
I got a kickball trophy up there that says otherwise, Jeff. Come on.
You're right. The day I forgot my shoes and I couldn't play. I just had to throw in a jab for the West Virginia guys. That's just what we do when we get together, us West Virginia guys. We feel you should know. You're at my wedding, Eric. Nick, just again, briefly, can you talk a little bit about how people can connect with you, how wrestlers can get in contact with you, how the trainings look now that we have COVID going on? What are some things that if someone were interested in speaking with you, I know every week when we talk about it, we tell them about the promo code POWER, 50% off their initial consultation. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process and the logistics behind that?
Yeah. So, like you said, the first step is we'll do an initial consult, kind of make sure that we're a right fit for each other. And then, after that, what most people do is they do individual sessions where it's kind of like a mastery session where it's one-on-one. Teams are welcome to reach out as well, but I would say 90% of the people that reach out are looking for that one-on-one stuff. And, it can be done virtually. A lot of it, probably about 60% happens in my office, 40% happens virtually, and you buy a 5 or 7 session package, and again, the reason why you can't just do one is, again, if you're struggling with some of these things and you've been struggling with them for 5 years, odds are 45 minutes after talking to me, you're not gonna be like ready to conquer the world. My confidence is, I got this, that's not going to happen. So I just want to set people's expectations right and say it's going to take a little bit of time, but if you put in the effort, we're going to get you mentally sharp and ready to take on the world.
That's awesome. And I love it, Nick, and I appreciate your time here tonight. I'm glad we were able to get to talk to you a little bit about the specifics and the tangibles and the things that actually go into it, because it's not as simple as you said as just taking a deep breath. There's a lot more about that in your training. So I appreciate your time tonight, and I hope lots of wrestlers are tuning in and listening and take advantage of this opportunity, because I think someone as highly trained as you are and who has worked with high level folks in the world, such as in the Army, I think you'd be wasting a good opportunity to actually learn something and have it applied to you in your wrestling. So again, I appreciate your time, Nick, and go West Virginia. They're playing Gonzaga tonight, so we got to get a win tonight.
Yeah, it's a big game.
Eric,
all right, Jeff. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Eric,
thanks, Nick.
You want to say anything to Nick about WVU or anything? You want to throw any more shots?
No, I can't. Pitt lost to St. Francis, so I can't even mention basketball.
Okay,
that's not going to happen. So,
all right, Nick.
Thanks for stopping by, Nick.
Yeah,
thanks, Nick. Well, Eric, I think Nick touched on a lot of different things that I know personally in my life, in my career, were very detrimental to me. And I can remember pre-matches just wrestling, exerting so much energy, just worrying or pacing back and forth and, warming up way too early. I mean, all these different things that happen in wrestling, because you train for so long, and then you only have 6 minutes to actually perform, so to speak, and you want it to be, the best performance ever. And you sometimes just, the mental aspect of it is just so imperative, so critical. I think training like this is just a no-brainer. I think the best athletes, including wrestlers all in the world, are doing something like this.
Yeah, I'm actually a little envious, Jeff. I'm old enough that, like he said, this wasn't really around too much whenever I was wrestling, and I wish that I'd had the benefit of something like this to make me stronger. It wasn't so much that I was burning myself out, but there are just so many things that I learned, afterwards, that I watched how great wrestlers go about their tasks. And I was like, man, I could have done that so much better if I'd have only realized at the time, how big the mental side of it is.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things I do when we are going to all these different events is I'll watch the elite level athletes warm up. I'll watch how they warm up. I'll watch how their coaches interact with them. Just because you've got to think, like, what's the secret sauce? Like, what are they doing that's different? And I can remember Chance Marsteller. Every time he was wrestling, he would slap himself literally all over himself, and I'm like, okay, that works for him, clearly. But other wrestlers, they're sitting in the corner,
Hidely punching himself in the face.
Hidely punching himself in the chin. Again, like Nick said, like, you're gonna go up to a 20 real quick, but can you sustain that? And for 6 minutes, it's a 6-minute sprint, but you also have to conserve. You have to know when when is the time to really go into high gear and when's not. So there's so much that goes into it. And I agree with you, Eric. I'm envious, because I think that was my biggest hurdle and setback, was the mental aspect of that. And I think a lot of wrestlers struggle with that. And it's just like, if you don't ever go to practice, you're not going to get any better. It's the same way with your training your mind. If you don't, hone those skills, it's not going to just magically just one day happen. So I think it's awesome what Nick's doing. And I definitely would encourage any type of wrestler that's looking for that type of training to pursue that and look into something like Nick Fuller and what he's doing in the Tactile Mind. So, Eric, I didn't mean to bust on you about competing not that long ago, but you just kind of said it yourself. You just said that it's been a while.
Oh yeah, no, it's obviously been a long time since I was competing on a wrestling mat. I got no problem admitting that. But no, and it's changed so much since then.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's changed a lot, and the last 10, 20 years. Like I said, I can remember being handed the book Mind Gym to read, and I'm like, I was going to a personal trainer to get bigger and get stronger and faster. Why are you giving me a book? But he was right. He was 100% on the ball with that. So, speaking of changes, some of the things we're going to talk about here tonight include the top incoming freshman report, but we didn't get to talk about it last week, Eric, and that was some of the transfers that happened. We talked about the Gibsons and how they are no longer at Forest Hills and they're now at Bishop McCourt, which really just sent shockwaves through the District 6 field, because Forest Hills was one of those schools that we knew was going to be returning such a big chunk of talent and going to be welcoming in a guy like Mason Gibson, who is our top incoming freshman. Those two are now at McCourt. Talk a little bit about that, Eric, and kind of the domino effect that's had, and really what you think is the bigger implications from this.
Well, this is something that we've been talking about for months. Obviously there were some situations there at Forest Hills where there were a couple factions that weren't getting along. There were some issues there. And so there was discussion, I know we talked about it going back to midsummer or even earlier, probably June, even about whether or not this very move might happen, whether these whether these Forest Hills kids, specifically the Gibsons and the Bassetts, would be moving to Bishop McCourt. And that it looked like for a while it wasn't going to happen, because they all started the school year at Forest Hills, and then just a couple of weeks ago they moved to Bishop McCourt. So this is going to get really contentious, I'm afraid, in District 6, as to whether Eric specifically is going to be able to wrestle, because I'm sure schools are going to challenge his move to Bishop McCourt, and whether or not he'll have that postseason eligibility. So that's one thing that is definitely in. And I still haven't, and I'll be honest, I haven't investigated it too much in the past couple of weeks, but there still seem to be some confusion. We talked about it a little bit about whether or not they can challenge Mason, who is only a 9th grader. So he could have gone to Bishop McCourt. My understanding is at the beginning of the year, he would have been okay to go there. But once he started at Forest Hills, is he now going to miss the postseason as well? So I'm not really sure where that all shakes out. And I'm sure we're going to have some high level meetings in District 6 that all this stuff will be discussed. But yeah, those are the two main ones. And then we had another, which Butler is it that's on the top incoming freshman?
Jordan Butler.
Is it Jordan? Okay. But he and his brother also transferred to Bishop McCourt, and a ton of guys at the really high junior high level, and some really stud elementary kids too. So, I mean, there was really a dynamic power shift from Forest Hills to Bishop McCourt. Now, that's not to say that Forest Hills has nothing left. I mean, you still got Jackson Arrington, a state champ, in your lineup. You still got Ryan Wyatt, who's a Division I commit, in your lineup. You've got a handful or a couple of place winners coming back there, where Forest Hills is still going to be strong, but it's not going to be that potential state championship team that we thought we were going to see in the next year or two.
And you kind of answered my other question, is eligibility wise, and like you said, I'm sure this is going to be challenged. I'm sure there's going to be some challenges to this. I'm just curious to know when that is going to take place, and whether that's going to, when can they actually be ruled eligible or ineligible for the postseason. That those are just question marks, especially with the uncertainty of our times just in general.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to look into here in the next couple of days. Honestly, I've been trying not to contact coaches too much, because they're just all completely frazzled right now with, trying to figure out what's going on with COVID. What's our season going to look like? What's our schedule going to look like? When can we practice? Mm-hmm. Because I know most of the Whitfield schools seem like they're practicing and they're going, but most of District 5 and District 6 are not. They've pushed it back into December for a start of practice date, mid-December. And so it's going to be, they could probably get going right before the turn of the new year, but I'm guessing most of these schools aren't really going to see the live wrestling action until January.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably more realistic for some of those schools to actually have wrestling start probably in January. But I'm just curious to know with the Bishop McCourt. I would assume with Mason at least, They probably knew the ground rules before this move happened. I highly doubt this was just a spontaneous thing, and they probably looked over everything and probably talked to a lawyer, to be honest, to say, okay, do we have any concerns, or are there any issues here? I feel like they wouldn't just do it and risk the eligibility of both Mason and Eric. I don't think so, at least.
No, and like I said, I haven't gotten too much feedback on Mason. I know with Eric, unfortunately, the situation had just become really difficult for him at Forest Hills, through a couple things, not laying blame on anyone, anything like that. But from what I was told, it was to the point where they said, if he has to sit out the postseason to make this move, then so be it. This is the best thing for him. We want to get him a new start at a different school. And if wrestling suffers because of that, then so be it. We're going to do what's best for him.
Yeah, that really speaks to volumes of how contentious that situation was at Forest Hills. And, you hate to see that, because there's a lot of good folks, on both sides, on all sides. There's a lot of good people individually. It's just, things just sometimes don't work out, right? So
yeah, and that's the hard part is, for me, I know both sides of it. I like people on both sides of it. I've been friends with these people for years, and it's really tough to see this back and forth, and just the whole situation deteriorating before your eyes. So it's really a shame to see.
Well, those weren't the only transfers that happened this year in Pennsylvania. In fact, there was quite a few. Some of the notable ones that we have are Derek Berlitz, who was at Notre Dame Green Pond, who is now at Southern Columbia. Now, he actually moved before this year, but he never finished out the year at Notre Dame Green Pond. He actually is a big-time football player. He played football for Southern Columbia this year, who won like their 40th state title in a row, I think. And then he's now going to be competing there. So Notre Dame to Southern Columbia is kind of an interesting move between wrestling powers and football power, so to speak. Again, we talked about Eric and Mason Gibson now at Bishop McCourt, and Berlitz will be a senior this year at Southern Columbia. Dale Mowring from McKeesport, and he's a guy who hasn't seen a lot of action, but he's one of the top heavyweights in the state, in my opinion. He just never really got a chance to compete as much. He was dealing with some injuries, some other things going on, so he was only like 11-3 in his career at McKeesport. He was a PJW state champion. We saw him at the Surge. He was a runner-up at the Surge. He's now at Wyoming Seminary. So obviously a good place to re-energize or restart your career, Eric.
Oh yeah, what a place to land there for him. So great opportunity there for Dale. Obviously great coaching, great wrestling partners there in the room. Should be a fantastic opportunity for him there.
Also, we had Ashton Campbell from Palisades, who's now going to be at Becca. So that's another. We've seen that move happen before with Palisades wrestlers heading over to Bethlehem Catholic. He was a state qualifier last year. He'll be a sophomore this year. Jake Guilfoyle from Wyoming Seminary. He was actually a Central Dauphin wrestler. Went to Wyoming Seminary his freshman year. Now he's going to be at Bishop McDevitt, which is the parochial school in the Harrisburg area. Hunter Robeson from Quaker Valley. He was a state qualifier as a freshman. You remember him, Eric, and he was at the Surge also 2 years ago. He was at General McLean first, then Quaker Valley. Last year was ruled ineligible, and now he's at Sagertown. So that's a big one, and I believe he'll probably be a 6-pounder again this year. So he's got to be one of the top 6-pounders in the state, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been, right there, I think, last year in Double A, had he been eligible, but as you said, wasn't able to compete in the postseason. So great to see how he's going to fare there at Sagertown.
You have another Whippeal guy who's moving to a school out, kind of not outside the Whippeal, but outside of Pittsburgh, so to speak. That's Grant McKay, who was at North Allegheny last year, one of our top incoming freshmen a year ago. He is now going to be at Laurel High School, which really is not known for their wrestling prowess, so to speak, but and especially compared to North Allegheny, right? So AAA to Double A, Grant McKay is now up there. So again, shifting of some power there with him leaving the Whippeal and AAA to the Double A. So that's a big one, Eric.
Yeah, and I love my Double A guys. So between looking at the top incoming freshmen and the number of absolute studs that are coming into Double A there, and then a couple of these AAA state qualifier, state medalist type guys moving into Double A, man, it's getting better.
I agree. I've never knocked Double A. The depth is different,
Yeah, it is. But obviously that's the case. But yeah, there's some really high end talent right now in Double A that has me really excited.
The brother of Gabe Miller from Pequay Valley, who's we saw was a state runner-up when he was in high school. His brother Nate Miller, much bigger, he's a heavyweight wrestler. He's going from Wyoming Seminary to Pequay Valley, back to Pequay Valley. He was there as a freshman. Now he's coming back, so seeing some shift at heavyweight at Wyoming Seminary. Hunter Mays from Conwell-Aiken, he was in Pennsylvania. He wrestled in Pennsylvania, was a state qualifier, and now he's in Howell, New Jersey. So he's been back and forth between both of there. So he is now going to be in Jersey. And Ricky Horger from Archbishop Ryan, District 12, was a district runner-up. He is at Conwell-Aiken now. So you lose one, you get another one in. But these are all the ones that we have kind of taken notice of. I'm sure there's other ones, Eric, and again, it's tough, just like the top incoming freshman report, it's tough to kind of, unless you see it on social media or you hear about it from a coach or parent, it's hard to know who's going to end up where, especially because a lot of people aren't broadcasting the fact that they're transferring either.
Right. And you credit to you for digging some of these up. You got guys going out of state to New Jersey, obviously the PIAA to preps and vice versa. So yeah, hard to keep a finger on everything that's going on, but you're doing a great job of keeping us abreast of everything that's happening there.
Well, I appreciate that, Eric. And some other things that are going on is the Flows Regional Training Center Cup duels, and that's coming up this weekend. We're going to have some Pennsylvania wrestlers that are competing, most notably the Hidley brothers, right? Trent and Hayden are going to be competing, but there's a ton of these, as much as disdain we have towards Flow and what they've put us through, this is a great series here with a lot of good wrestling. This is almost like a mini Olympic trials, if you will, because there's so many, or at least a world team trials, because there's so many studs. You look at Seth Gross, you got Miles Amin, Logan Massa, Mason Paris, Gable Stevenson. It just goes on and on and on. Of Makai Lewis, there's so many tough guys that are going to be competing. But I'm really super excited to see some of our PA guys, including Sammy Sasso. He'll probably be wrestling around 65 kilograms. Again, Trent and Hayden Hidley from the Wolfpack Wrestling Club, they're going to be wrestling at 74, 86 kilograms. Darian Cruz is also going to be wrestling on the Wolfpack Wrestling Club. So a former Bethlehem Catholic and Lehigh standout national champion. So I'm going to be cheering for the Wolfpack because they got 3 Pennsylvania guys, but and Jordan Wood, he's also going to be competing on the New Jersey and CERT team, so he's going to be at heavyweight. There's so many studs in this, Eric. So I'm looking forward to catching some of these matches.
It's funny how we look back and you see a great idea and you're like, man, why did it take someone so long to come up with that idea? It seems like a no-brainer in hindsight. And I wonder if in a couple of years we're going to be looking back at this and saying that, like, man, what makes college wrestling so great? One of the things is just what we were doing with West Virginia and Pitt, going back and forth. You've got a team that you're cheering on and you're pulling for your guys, and you're cheering on the color and the uniform and all that. And whenever we've had Olympic wrestling, yeah, everybody's going to pull for the US, but it's tougher whenever you've got those guys wrestling, for, you don't even know necessarily who they're on. But now that you see this and you're like, wait, okay, this team, the Wolfpack, I know that this is NC State and I know these guys, I watched them wrestle in college. Some of them are still in college. And so you've got that rooting interest there now. And I think this is going to be a big hit. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. You look at the names on here and you're like, man, this is going to be some really great competition. So I just think it's a phenomenal idea, and really excited to see how it pans out.
And the dynamics are shifting for sure in wrestling, and especially with the regional training centers. And credit is due to a lot of that with Nittany Lion Wrestling Club and what they've been able to do, especially on the Rockfin channel. There's a lot of folks, and we just saw Pitt Wrestling Club started a channel on Rockfin. So, we've got now 2 schools or 2 regional training centers in Pennsylvania that are going to be on Rockfin. I'm sure they're going to be putting some events together. In fact, I believe the December 22nd is their first event. I'm not sure if that's in conjunction with the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club or not. But I mean, look at all the Wisconsin Regional Training Center. You're having all these guys. I think COVID forced it, and Rockfin was just kind of there waiting, like, hey, if you want to monetize, some of your high-name guys here, get some exposure and have your wrestlers be competing. This is it right here. That's low-hanging fruit, man. I mean, that's the demand is there. The fans are there. They're going to tune in. So this is a no-brainer, but I think this is a game changer. And what that does is that forces someone like Flo. Again, we've talked about this many times, how the competition has made the wrestling fan and the consumer so much better, because if Rockfin never comes about, I highly doubt they're doing an RTC Duals. I just don't think that's not something that they're even thinking about doing. But the fact that Nittany Lion Wrestling Club is putting on, or should we say the Nittany Lions Nittany Lions Wrestling Club is putting on events, and all of a sudden this is a shockwave through the rest of the RTCs. Like, well, hold on a second, I got to get on this. So again, we're the winners here, the fans and the consumers that are looking at, because I'm watching their RTC Duals, I'm watching the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, I'm watching it all. So why would you not want to have that flourish? But unless you're Karen from Flo, I mean, then you probably don't want it to flourish. Obviously wrestling paid a huge price to COVID last year with the loss of the NCAA tournament. But if there is a positive that's coming out of it, and we're unfortunately, the Ivy Leagues have already lost this season coming up, but the positive that we are seeing come out of all of this is the emergence of RTCs and their own channels on Rockfin, own events where they can put it together. These guys can get paid to wrestle, and we can all get some great entertainment on a Tuesday or a Saturday or whatever night. And I would think that I don't know if there are any kind of NCAA regulations, how this will all shake out, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see NCAA meets, just regular season dual meets ending up on Rockfin channels and things like that as well. Yeah, I mean, it's no different than somebody having a match on Big Ten Network or on Flow for that matter. I mean, it's if I am the administrator at a school in Pennsylvania like Blockhaven or Pitt or Edinburgh, and I want to stream all our home matches, I don't have to necessarily sign. I mean, sure, it's within conferences too. I'm sure, like, right, but I don't see how that could be not happen. So I think it's great. I think we're going to continue to see this. I think, we are trying to put more out there, and there's a good chance you may see us doing some events hosting here in the future, potentially, Eric. So talking about the future is bright in Pennsylvania. Eric, what were your thoughts on the top incoming freshman report for someone who is, I mean, you're definitely in the know, but I mean, this was a lot of digging deep of some of these wrestlers. What were your thoughts initially when you were looking through this? Because obviously we know Mason Gibson, but what were your thoughts after going through the initial top incoming freshman of 2021?
The first thing, like I said, that jumped out at me as a double A guy is like, man, I'm looking at this, and there's some small school guys at the top of this list here that are really super talented. And then after that, I mean, the AAA rules again. You've still got a lot more guys on there in AAA, but then also the power of the preps. Malvern Prep. How much they've emerged in the past couple of years. I mean, it's incredible the guys that they already have in their lineup and the ones that they're adding to it now.
Yeah, I mean, they just continue to re-energize and rebuild the things that they're doing at Malvern. I mean, Nick Feldman is a good example of that. He wrestled at Solanco, ended up being a national prep champion at Malvern Prep. Colton Deary, same thing, wrestled at Garnett Valley, now went to Malvern Prep. But now you're seeing so many more guys coming up, training through the youth and programs there and staying there. So, the amount of talent, that Malvern Prep is able to continue to produce is just absolutely insane. Anyone in that area is benefiting from that. Malvern Prep leads it with 4, but they have 4 guys on the top incoming freshman report, but so do 2 other schools. One is Manheim, and they're 2 kind of obscure schools, right? They're not the ones that you're saying. Well, maybe for at least one of them. Manheim Township also has 4, and Trinity. I know my dad was jumping over he was over the moon because ever since I think the day I was born, he started giving me a history lesson on Trinity Hillers wrestling, and it's never stopped until this day. So and it's everyone's always so disappointed at the drop in Trinity and how they haven't, back in the day they were the Easton of this area. They were the best in the area. They have 4 guys on the list this year, so that's huge. I think that's a testament to what they've been able to build in the last few years. Ron Tarquino's there now, so they've got a lot of talent coming into that room. Manheim Township, they have 2 brothers, Camden and Caden Williams, that are just absolute studs. They're going to be very fun to watch throughout the next 4 years. They also have two new wrestlers that have immigrated to the United States from Puerto Rico, so that's pretty interesting because there's not a lot of tape on them. But from everything I've been told from sources, these 2 are very, very tough. They're going to make some impact very, very soon in their careers. Wyman Seminary has 3 from Pennsylvania, and North Allegheny has 3 as well. So, the best continue to have the top power there, but these other ones, like you said, with Manheim Township and Trinity, I like seeing that because. For years, we're always used to seeing Reynolds and Bethlehem Catholic and these big name schools that are always competing at high levels. There's some parity here, Eric.
There is, and you mentioned among the districts, I think there's a little bit more. Like for me, District 11 seems to be, I shouldn't say they're down because a couple of their top guys are going elsewhere. They're not going to be in District 11 schools, but it isn't quite the numbers that we normally see, I don't think, with District 11 of the guys on the top incoming freshman list.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, Nick Hoonstek is a Pottsville guy who's going to Blair, and Ethan Rivera is now in Florida. So I can see. But yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of that has to do with the national preps too, a little bit. District 7 just completely, blows it out of the water, but they kind of, I feel like they always do it, and it's probably because of my own Whitfield bias. But
well, I mean, to be fair, it's the largest league in the country, right? I mean, that's what the Whitfield is known for. It's massive, so it's got a ton of schools, and it is going to have a lot of guys that are going to be in that because you're talking an entire region there, basically, and a region that, quite frankly, is really, really good at wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean that taking off your glasses of the Whippeal anyways, they're really good at wrestling. There's a lot of high-end wrestlers that come out of the WPIAL regardless, year after year. One thing I was kind of surprised at was District 3 having 21 wrestlers on the list, because District 3 kind of, you had the Central Dauphin, Cumberland Valley, and then you kind of had a lull a little bit, and there was, some people that were saying what's going on in District 3, and now all of a sudden we got 21 guys on the top incoming freshman report. That's pretty impressive. Again, it's a large district. You got 60 plus schools in it, but that's still pretty impressive in my opinion, just to have and have a couple highly ranked guys too. So it's, again, I think there's a lot of parity. I think there's a lot of different mix of double A, triple A, and across the districts as well, Eric.
Well, and I think the other thing that we need to talk about is just, years ago, a guy came up as a freshman, and you're like, well, maybe he can get to states as a freshman, and then, place as a sophomore, and then, be a state title contender as a junior, and then really be a force as a senior. And now we're like, okay, this guy's coming up and he's probably going to win a state title this year.
Yeah, I mean, I put the projected finishes, and a lot of times I'm super wrong on them, which is fine. A lot of times I'm never doing it for accuracy. But Mason Gibson, how can you not put that he's going to be a state champion? I don't know. I mean, obviously Gary Steen's going to have something to say about that if they're in the same weight class, but I mean, the kid's a Super 32 champion and a Super 32 runner-up in the last 2 years. I mean, Super 32 is arguably the toughest tournament in the nation. So, Mason Gibson, yes, we know him. Rune Lawrence, I mean, I think some people were surprised I had him number 2, but he is the biggest upside there is Rune Lawrence, because Thane kind of came in under the surface and under the radar for sure. He had never won a PJW state title. He just came on really strong in high school. I think Rune, I mean, everyone that's in that area will say Rune is even better than Thane was at this time. So I can't wait to see him. I think he is a solid number 2 on the top incoming freshman report.
Yeah, Rune is a guy that I haven't gotten to see in person yet, and I can't wait to watch him wrestle, because I've heard so much about him coming up. And you look at the results and the accolades that he's had. I mean, he's a guy that I agree with you. I think he's clearly in there as number 2, and could be pushing some of those really good guys that we're talking about, the upperclassmen, right away. That he's going to be right in the mix with those guys.
A unique one to rank, Eric, was Pearson Manville, because he's already wrestled 2 high school seasons in Minnesota. He was in 7th grade and 8th grade. He's wrestled in Minnesota seasons already. So that in itself is hard to judge, because he was a state champion in Minnesota and he was a state runner-up in Minnesota. Now he and his brother now are at State College. So you have Pearson, who is like, okay, how good is he? How really good is he? And I think he's going to be really good. And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, he's not really a Pennsylvania guy, but he's here as a freshman. He's competing in the PIAA, so he's on the list, and he's wrestled for Pennsylvania multiple times too, on different teams. And like I said, he was a 2019 Minnesota state champion, so he's already won a state title. He's actually one of 2 people on the list that has already won a high school state title, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. The lines kind of blur now with where guys are from. It used to be pretty easy to say, oh, this guy's a PA guy, this guy's a Minnesota guy, this guy. But you see these moves now, and I know I've kind of kidded you about it before, about how long does it take to become a permanent resident of Pennsylvania in the Jeff Upson eyes, because it's like, well, this guy moved here, but Bo Bartlett did this, and we're going back and forth on all this stuff.
There's criteria, Eric. There's criteria. Okay, that makes you a Pennsylvania wrestler. Now here's the golden rule, and I'm going to give you a secret, so everyone at home can write this down.
All right, get the notepads out. Take this down.
The golden rule in determining where somebody's from is when they go to college, what is listed on their bio page as their hometown. Okay.
So we're not really going to know for another 4 or 5 years whether these guys actually belong on the list or not. Once they get to college, we'll be able to look back and find out whether or not they were actually in there. So if you're number 12 on the list, hey, you might move up a spot or two if Manville goes to college and says he's from Minnesota.
Listen, that's just one. That's just one of many different ways we determine. Jojo Aragona, New Jersey always tries to steal him. He's not. He's not from New Jersey. He's from Pennsylvania.
That's all right. I always try to claim Ryan Anderson. So
well, I know you do, and I never tried to claim him. He
I know. I love Ryan Anderson.
I love the Mountain Dew man. He's yeah. So Ethan Rivera from Lake Highland Prep in Florida, he was a state champion last year for them as an 8th grader, and Lake Highland's actually going to be wrestling in the preps this year, not the Florida State tournament.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you about that.
I screwed up.
They're called Lake Highland Prep.
Yeah.
I assume they were in preps, but they weren't before, huh?
No, they're going to be competing this year though. And so, but he's a stud. He's originally from like the Pocono Mountain, Stroudsburg area. So I'm excited to see what he can do again down in Florida. There's a lot of guys here that are just waiting to break out. There's a lot of guys on the honorable mention list, or even the 60s through 70s, that are just, a couple years or potentially a year away from really turning things around. And it's so hard to judge, someone's youth career to figure out how they're going to be in high school, because there's so many different aspects and factors that go into it. So we've got the top 75, plus we got 32 honorable mentions for over 100 different wrestlers listed. And honestly, I don't think it matters where you're at. I mean, this is just a testament to all the hard work that these wrestlers have done prior to high school, and now here they are looking for a shot. And look, there's going to be a lot of guys that aren't on this list that are going to, by their senior year, they're going to be in the top 100 recruits. And that's what the beauty I love about the top incoming freshman report is. Looking back at years like Hunter Kaka, I missed Hunter Kaka, never had him on the top incoming freshman report. Wins 2 state titles. That's awesome. That to me is awesome to see. Nate Schoen, guy who I had high up on the top incoming freshman, state champion, 3-time state medalist already. So that's, again, it's just cool to see the differences in how people end up finishing.
The one other thing I took away from this is I think this is vindication for people like me who really fought the move where they were initially talking about getting rid of the 106-pound weight class.
Oh my gosh!
Because if you look at your projected weights for these guys, 43 of these guys are projected to wrestle 106.
Jeez.
And to me, that's the importance of 106, is that all of these guys have that ability to get up as a freshman and wrestle on the varsity and contend for a state title or a regional spot or whatever it is, but they're taking that step forward that they might have been stunted a little bit more if they were still in junior high this year. So I think it's so important for those guys to get up there and wrestle 106 now and then grow into a 32-pounder, a 38-pounder, or, if you're Zahid Valencia, just keep growing.
Yeah.
So it's great to see these guys with that opportunity, that a lot of these guys would have been too small if you'd taken it to 110 or something like that it would be really a lot to ask for them to go up there and compete at that level.
And some of these guys even still are going to be small for under 6 pounds, which is insane. But, the fact that was being contemplated was dropping 106 is just mind-boggling. I'm so glad that I'll have 13 weight classes as long as you keep 106. But if you look through the top incoming freshman report, number 19, Andrew Binney, he won he was second in the state at PJWs at 92 pounds. Landon Bainey from West Branch, he was 92-pound 4th place at PJWs in 2020. Louis Gill from Hickory was 87 pounds runner-up in 2020. Chris Vargo, 92 pounds. So, like, all these guys that are coming in, we're talking about, like, 10, 15, 20 pounds if they've put on in the span of 9 months. So, I'm so glad that 106 is intact, because you're right. I think the top incoming freshman report really highlights how many young wrestlers are in the lightweights. Now, that's not to say we don't have a lot of heavyweights, because we got Sean Kinney, you got Tucker Hogan. There's a lot of tougher big guys coming in as well, but it just really really drives home the point that 106 is a needed weight class, Eric.
Yeah, and that's what I think that the argument was all along, is that, okay, it might not be filled, there may be forfeits, but it's really important for the development of these young guys to have that weight class where a freshman can step in and perform there and get a chance on that big stage.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. And I can't wait. I certainly hope that we have some semblance of a season this year. Powerade is still on. Powerade is going full head of steam. Top Hat, I believe, is happening as well. I'm curious, for anyone who's listening in, what tournaments do you know of that are still happening? Because right now our list is dwindling down. So maybe you know of a tournament that is happening. If you do, go ahead and shoot us over to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Just let us know, because right now we're trying to figure out who is wrestling where and when and what, and it's hard to keep track of, especially with schedules, as you said, Eric, changing all the time. So if you know of any tournaments or any like dual quads that are happening, please let us know, because we're going to be trying to cover it as much as we can with the limited competition that's going to be happening this year, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to, as you said, to kind of keep track of everything that's going on. I do know Paul Myers is still planning on holding the Holiday Classic, and I think that is the December 19th, I believe it's when it is. And now he's looking for some teams to help fill that out a little bit. Just the way things have gone so far, some teams had to drop out of there. So a lot going on, but at this point, still a lot that we think we can look forward to.
I hope so, and I think we will have some things to look forward to. Certainly, I know Powerade is one that is circled and highlighted. Like that's Notre Dame, Green Pond, Bethlehem Catholic, Malvern Prep, Wyoming Seminary. Those are some power schools. Waynesburg. So really excited to see that. I want to thank Nick Fuller from the Tactical Mind for coming on tonight to talk a little bit about his business and what he's doing over there in Lewisburg. And, I think it's a great opportunity for wrestlers to take advantage of that. The TacticalMindLLC.com is where you can find Nick. And again, if you use the promo code POWER, you'll get 50% off your initial consultation. So I appreciate him stopping by. Eric, we're inching closer. The snow is on the ground.
Yeah, especially in my house.
I know. Well, the snow is here. That means wrestling's here. So let's get it going, right?
Yep, we're working on the rankings, trying to get everything situated there. You finally got your top incoming freshman out.
Yeah.
Now you can move on to the more time-intensive stuff too, where you keep going and cranking out all those regional rankings and state rankings. And
yeah, it's fun. I hope Joe Youngblood's not listening and working on his rankings right now. So, and you too, Eric. Me too. I got to get working on them as well. So, I'm looking forward to it. So, we should have those out probably next week. We're looking at putting out our regional and state rankings next week. So, top incoming freshman was the priority. Now that's over, we're going to start hammering out the rankings. So, be on the lookout for that. So, Eric, I appreciate your time tonight, and don't get snowed in too much there. Okay. At least you got.
I think I'm good now, but like you said, that's a sign of wrestling season, so I'll take it.
At least you got internet now for being snowed in, right? So, I appreciate it, Eric, and we will be talking to you very soon. Again, stay tuned in for rankings on PA Power Wrestling. You can visit us at papowerwrestling.com, on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course, check us out on Rockfin. We got a ton of content on there. So, thanks again, Eric.
Thank you.
Yep.